Hello again, it is me again, and this is going to be a special recording of the English Book Club. And there are lots of recordings I know I've got to upload, but yeah, that's another issue out of my control really. But maybe in the new year we'll get some better connection on our bandwidth. But using up all our bandwidth for uploading videos has been a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, because it ties up the computer for far too long whilst I upload them. So I think because they're an hour long, I manage with shorter videos, but longer videos it's way too much. So I'm going to upload this one totally out of order, and at some point hopefully I'll be able to upload the others. And this is a Christmas break Vanity Fair. So we are reading, of course, Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. And I have actually forgotten to look where we got up to, which would be helpful. So let me go and check that in Discord. Let me see. English sessions. I'm going to have to reorganise Discord, I think. Book Club Vanity Fair, here we go, and let me go to the pinned messages. So we should be on page 267. I've got my fingers crossed now. In the PDF from Now, Rawdon, Crawley, Rascal as the Colonel was, and there it is. The readers today, and they've all sent me recordings. This is why it's a bit special. It's very special. Sorry, Hernan. It's dead special, it is. My Gen Z session's coming out. So, part 1 is read by Alexandra, part 2 by Eleanor, part 3 by Hermina, part 4 by Hernan, and part 5 by Paulette. Hopefully there won't be any technical glitches, but this is the internet, we never know. And what I'll do is I'll play each part and then I'll give the feedback as per normal. Of course, people won't be able to try out the corrections, but if you want to, the people who've read, you can record the words I correct for you, any phrases as well, and send me either a voice message in Discord or just post a file to me in Discord. Okay, so fingers crossed, let's get started. I've been awfully clever. I've got each of the links, apart from Hernan. For some reason his wouldn't work, but I've downloaded the file. So let's get going. How do I do this in here? Let me see. Alexandra. There it is. Okay, let's go. Hi Lynn, there is a part Paulette gives me, which I hope is going to start with Now, Rawdon, Crawley. I haven't checked. I'm very trusting. Here we go.
Hallo, Vanity Fair. Now, Rawdon Crawley, rascal as the colonel was, had certain manly tendencies of affection in his heart, and could love a child and woman still. For Rawdon Minor, he had a great secret tenderness then, which did not escape Rebecca, though she did not talk about it to her husband. It did not annoy her. She was too good-natured. It only increased her scorn for him. He felt somehow ashamed of this paternal softness and hid it from his wife, only indulging in it when alone with the boy. He used to take him out of mornings when they would go to the stables together and to the park. Little Lord Southdown, the best-natured of men, who would make you a present of the head from his head, and whose main occupation in life was to buy knickknacks that he might. She did not talk about it to her husband. It did not annoy her. She was too good-natured. It only increased her scorn for him. He felt somehow ashamed of this paternal softness and hid it from his wife, only indulging in it when alone with the boy. He used to take him out of mornings when they would go to the stables together and to the park. Little Lord Southdown, the best-natured of men, who would make you a present of the head from his head, and whose main occupation in life was to buy knickknacks that he might give them away afterwards, bought the little chap a pony, not much bigger than a large rat, the donor said, and on this little black Shetland pygmy, young Rawdon's grandfather was pleased to mount the boy and to walk by his side in the park. It pleased him to see his old quarters and his old fellow guardsmen at Knightsbridge. He had begun to think of his bachelorhood with something like regret. The old troopers were glad to recognize the ancient officer and dandled the little colonel. Colonel Crowley found dining at mess and with his brother officers very pleasant. Hang it, I ain't clever enough for her. I know it. She won't miss me, he used to say. And he was right. His wife did not miss him. Rebecca was fond of her husband. She was always perfectly good-humored and kind to him. She did not ever show her scorn much for him. Perhaps she liked him the better for being a fool. He was her upper servant and maître d'hôtel. He went on her errands, obeyed her orders without question, rode in the carriage in the ring with her without repining, took her to the opera box, solaced himself at his club during the performance, and came punctually back to fetch her when due. He would have liked her to be a little fonder of the boy, but ever to that he reconciled himself. Hang it, you know she is so clever, she said, and I am not literally, and that you know, for as we have said before, it requires no great wisdom to be able to win at cards and billiards. And Rawdon made no pretensions to any other sort of skill. When the companion came, his domestic duties became very light. His wife encouraged him to dine abroad, she would let him off duty at the opera. "Don't stay and stupefy yourself at home tonight, my dear," she would say. "Some men are coming who will only bore you. I would not ask them, but you know, it's for your good. And now I have a sheepdog. I need not be afraid to be alone. A sheepdog, a companion, Peggy Sharp with a companion. Um, isn't it good fun?" thought Mrs. Crowley to herself. The notion tickled hugely her sense of humour. One Sunday morning, as Rawdon Crawley, his little son, and the pony were taking their accustomed walk in the park, they passed by an old acquaintance of the colonel's, Corporal Clink, of the regiment, who was in conversation with a friend, an old gentleman who held a boy in his arms about the age of little Rawdon. The other youngster had seized hold of the Waterloo medal with the corporal wore and was examining it with delight. "Thank you."
Thank you. Very well read, Alexandra. Okay, so as I say, this is the bit that's a bit different. I will read out the corrections, and Alexandra, it's totally up to you. You can record the corrections if you want. You can just listen and try them out for yourself, or you can send a recording to me. Okay? So, the first one, which appeared several times, and has appeared many times before, Colonel, silent L, like the nut, Colonel, okay? Then her, not him, I think you just misread that at the beginning. Bachelorhood, no S, okay? Bachelorhood. Fond, not like found, and drove, drove, okay? Then solaced, not solaced, solaced, and accustomed. Then seized, not like sized. And you get 2 smileys. Oh, let me put those in here. I made a mess of this. How am I going to do this? Oh no. I do need a better setup for this kind of thing. Okay, let's see. Okay. So I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not. Maybe I need a different page for these. Sorry about this. Bear with me. Okay. There we go. Okay, there we go. So, you get 2 smileys. First one for pygmy, and the second one, so well done, because you did do fond earlier, but you did correct yourself to fonder. Well done. Okay, so the next bit of the reading is from part 2, Eleanor. Let me just get to that recording, bear with me, and eventually we'll get it there, I think, manage, rather than sharing it publicly. It's all a bit of a mess because I don't want to download the recordings. My poor computer gets clogged up and I forget to change them. So here's Eleanor, and Eleanor, take it away.
"Good morning, Your Honor," said Cling, in reply to the how-do-cling of the kennel. "This young gentleman is about the lead kennel's age, sir," continued the copperer. "His father was a Waterloo man, too," said the old gentleman who carried the boy. "Wasn't he, Georgie?" "Yes," said Georgie. He and the little chap on the pony were looking at each other with all their might, solemnly scanning each other as children do. "In a line regiment," Kling said with a patronizing air. "He was a captain of the regiment," said the old gentleman rather pompously. "Captain George Osborne, sir." "Perhaps you knew him?" "He died the death of a hero, sir, fighting against the Corsican tyrant." Colonel Crawley blushed quite red. "I knew him very well, sir," he said. "And his wife, his dear little wife, sir. How is she?" "She is my daughter, sir," said the old gentleman, putting down the boy and taking out a card with great solemnity, which he handed to the colonel. On it written, "Mr. Sedley, sole agent for the Black Diamond and Anti-Cinder Coal Association, Bankers Wharf, Thames Street, and Anna Maria Cottages, Fulham Road West." Little Georgie went up and looked at the Shetland pony. "Should you like to have a ride?" said Rawdon Minor from the saddle. "Yes," said Georgie. The colonel, who had been looking at him with some interest, took up the child and put him on the pony behind Rawdon Minor. "Take hold of him, Georgie," he said. "Take my little boy round the waist. His name is Rawdon." And both the children began to laugh. "You won't see a prettier pair, I think, this summer's day, sir," said the good-natured copperel. And the colonel, the copperel, and old Mr. Sedley with his umbrella walked by the side of the children. Chapter 38. A family in a very small way. We must suppose little George Osborne has ridden from Knightsbridge towards Fulham, and we stop and make inquiries at that village regarding some friends whom we have left there. How is Mrs. Amelia after the storm of Waterloo? Is she living and thriving? What has come of Major Dobbin, whose cap was always hankering about her premises? And is there any news of the collector of Bogley Wollah? The facts concerning the latter are briefly these. Our worthy fat friend Joseph Sedley returned to India not long after his escape from Brussels. Either his fellow was up, or he dreaded to meet any witnesses of his Waterloo flight. However it might be, he went back to his duties in Bengal very soon after Napoleon had taken up his residence at St. Helena, where Jos saw the ex-emperor. To hear Mr. Sedley talk on board ship, you would have supposed that it was not the first time he and the Corsican had met, and that the civilian had bearded the French general at Mount St. John. He had 1,000 anecdotes about the famous battles. He knew the position of every regiment and the loss which each had incurred. He did not deny that he had been concerned in those victories, that he had been with the army and carried dispatches for the Duke of Wellington. and he described what the Duke did and said on every conceivable moment of the day of Waterloo, with such an accurate knowledge of his Grace's sentiments and proceedings, that it was clear he must have been by the Conqueror's side throughout the day. So, as a non-combatant, his name was not mentioned in the public documents relative to the battle. Perhaps he actually worked himself up to believe that he had been engaged with the army. Certain it is that he made a prodigious sensation for some time at Calcutta, and was called Waterloo sadly during the whole of his subsequent stay in Bengal. The bills which Jos had given for the purchase of these unlucky horses were paid without question by him and his agents. He never was heard to allude to the bargain, and nobody knows for a certainty what became of the horses, or how he got rid of them, or of Isidore, his Belgian servant, who thought a grey horse very like the one which Jos rode at Valenciennes some time during the autumn of 1815.
Very nicely read, Eleanor. Well done. Okay, so, and you got us to chapter 38. Super. Okay, your corrections. Let me just take them over here. So, Eleanor, first one, nom, 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 nom. Little, not litter, little. You've got to get the O in. Had your breakfast, I hope. Then returned, like turn. So you've got to get the sound in, returned. And then Bengal, all. Okay? And Napoleon. Okay? Then, yep, no smileys, but that's because you had very few corrections to make. So very well done. Good job. Our next reader on the list is Hermina. And let me just get to Hermina's recording. Oh, no, I've done that wrong. So I think I'm getting used to doing it this way. And here it is. Let's give it a go.
Hello Lynn, this is Hermine, and I am reading Part 3. Joe's London agents had orders to pay £120 yearly to his parents at Fulham. It was the chief support of the old couple, for Mr. Sedley's speculations in life subsequent to his bankruptcy did not by any means retrieve the broken old gentleman's fortune. He tried to be a wine merchant, a coal merchant, a commission lottery agent, etc., etc. He sent round prospectuses to his friends whenever he took a new trade, and ordered a new brass plate for the door, and talked pompously about making his fortune still. But fortune never came back to the feeble and stricken old man. One by one his friends dropped off, and were weary of buying dear coals and bad wine from him. And there was only his wife in all the world who fancied, when he trotted off to the city of a morning, that he was still doing any business there. At evening he crawled slowly back, and he used to go off nights to a little club at the tavern, where he disposed of the finances of the nation. It was wonderful to hear him talk about millions, and ages, and discounts, and what Rothschild was doing, and Baring Brothers. He talked of such vast sums that the gentlemen of the club, the apothecary, the undertaker, the great carpenter and builder, the parish clerk, who was allowed to come stealthily, and Mr. Clubb, our old acquaintance. I, respected the old gentleman. I was better off once, sir, he did not fail to tell everybody who used the room. My son, sir, is at this minute chief magistrate of Ramgunge in the presidency of Bengal, and touching his 4,000 rupees per mensan. My daughter might be a colonel's lady if she liked. I might draw upon my son the first magistrate, sir, for £2,000 tomorrow, and Alexander would cash my bill. Down, sir, down on the counter, sir. But the Sedleys were always a proud family. You and I, my dear reader, may drop into this condition one day, for have not many of our friends attained it. Our luck may fail, our powers forsake us, our place on the boards be taken by better and younger minds. The chance of life roll away and leave us shattered and stranded. Then men will walk across the road when they meet you, or worse still hold you out a couple of fingers and patronize you in a pitying way. Then you will know, as soon as your back is turned, that your friend begins with a poor devil, what imprudences he has committed, what chances that sheep has thrown away. Well, well, a carriage and 3,000 a year is not the summit of the reward, nor the end of God's judgment of men. If quacks prosper as often as they go to the wall, if Zannis succeed and knaves arrive at fortune, and vice versa, sharing ill luck and prosperity for all the world, like the ablest and most honest amongst us. I say, brother, the gifts and pleasures of Vanity Fair cannot be held of any great account, and that it is probable. But we are wandering out of the domain of the story. Had Mrs. Sedley been a woman of energy, she would have exerted it after her husband's ruin, and occupying a large house would have taken in boarders. The broken Sedley would have acted well as the boarding-house landlady's husband. The monarchs of private life, the titular lord and master, the carver, house steward, and humble husband of the occupier of the dingy throne. I have seen men of good brains and breeding, and of good hopes and vigor once, who feasted squires and kept hunters in their youth, meekly cutting up legs of mutton for rancorous old harridans, and pretending to preside over their dreary tables. But Mrs. Sedley, we say, had not spirit enough to bustle about for a few select inmates to join a cheerful musical family, such as one reads of in the Times. She was content to lie on the shore where fortune has stranded her, and you could see that the career of this old couple was over. This is the end of part 3. I had to read, and Lynn, thank you 1,000 times that you give us this chance to read in advance. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, Hermina. I'll say it again. You did a great job. So let's give you your feedback. The first one, possessive. So not Joss, Josses. So you've got to have the to say it's possessive. Josses. So Josses. Then prospectuses, not like use. It's prospectus, and then it's plural prospectuses. Okay. Then tavern. The V again. Rothschild, it's a famous name, and if you like wine, yeah, you might want to pronounce it when you go for a bottle of it. Rothschild. Bengal, again. We say Bengal tiger, but Bengal for the country. Okay. Then chap, not like cheap. Chap is a man basically. It's another way of saying guy, bloke, fellow, chap. Okay. Then quacks. In this context, nothing to do with from ducks. It's quacks who are like fake doctors, snake oil doctors, people who pretend to be doctors that aren't really or aren't very good doctors. They're quacks. Okay. Vice versa. I know it looks like vice, but it's vice versa in this context. Yeah. And ableist, to be able, abler, or more able, I would say. Sorry. Able, more able, and the ablest. Okay, or the most able if it's too much for you. Then vigor. Okay, so well done. Our next reader, and I had to download this one for some reason, I don't know why, but our next reader is Hernan. So let's see what Hernan has got for us and hope that the media player works. Okay, I think he goes straight into it, so brace yourselves.
I don't think they were unhappy. Perhaps they were a little prouder in their downfall than in their prosperity. Mrs. Sidley was always a great person for her landlady, Mrs. Clapp, when she descended and passed many hours with her in the basement or ornamented kitchen. The Irish maid, Betty Flanagan's bonnets and ribbons, her sauciness, her idleness, her reckless prodigality of kitchen candles, her consumption of tea and sugar, and so forth, occupied and amused the old lady almost as much as the doings of her former household, when she had Sambo and the coachman, and a groom, and a footboy, and a housekeeper, with a regiment of female domestics, her former household, about which the good lady talked 100 times a day. And besides Betty Flanagan, Mrs. Sidley had all the maids of all work in the street to superintend. She knew how each tenant of the cottages paid or owed his little rent. She stepped aside when Mrs. Rochemont, the actress, passed with her dubious family. She flung up her head when Mrs. Pestler, the apothecary's lady, drove by in her husband's professional one-horse chaise. She had colloquies with the greengrocer about the pen'orth of turnips, which Mr. Sidley loved. She kept an eye upon the milkman and the baker's boy, and made visitations to the butcher, who sold hundreds of oxen very likely with less ado than was made about Mrs. Sidley's loin of mutton, and she counted the potatoes under the joint of Sundays, on which days, dressed in her best, she went to church twice and read Blair's sermons in the evening. On that day, for business prevented him on weekdays from taking such a pleasure, it was all Sidley's delight to take out his little grandson Georgie to the neighbouring parks or Kensington Gardens, to see the soldiers or to feed the ducks. Georgie loved the redcoats, and his grandpapa told him how his father had been a famous soldier, and introduced him to many sergeants and others with Waterloo medals on their breasts, to whom the old grandfather pompously presented the child as the son of Captain Osborne, of the number of regiment unknown, who died gloriously on the glorious 18th. He has been known to treat some of these non-commissioned gentlemen to a glass of porter, and indeed, in their first Sunday walks, was disposed to spoil little Georgie, sadly gorging the boy with apples and Parliament, to the detriment of his health, until Amelia declared that George should never go out with his grandpapa unless the latter promised solemnly and on his honour not to give the child any cakes, lollipops, or stalled produce whatever. Between Mrs. Sidley and her daughter there was a sort of coolness about this boy, and a secret jealousy, for one evening in George's very early days, Amelia, who had been seated at work in their little parlour, scarcely remarking that the old lady had quitted the room, ran upstairs instinctively to the nursery at the cries of the child, who had been asleep until that moment, and there found Mrs. Sidley in the act of surreptitiously administering Daffy's elixir to the infant. Amelia, the gentlest and sweetest of everyday mortals, when she found this meddling with her maternal authority, thrilled and trembled all over with anger. Her cheeks, ordinarily pale, now flushed up until they were as red as they used to be when she was a child of 12 years old. She seized the baby out of her mother's arms, and then grasped at the bottle, leaving the old lady gaping at her, furious, and holding the guilty teaspoon. Amelia flung the bottle crashing into the fireplace. "I will not have baby poison, mamma," cried Emmy, rocking the infant about violently with both her arms round him and turning with flashing eyes at her mother. "Poison, Amelia," said the old lady. "This language to me? He shall not have any medicine but that which Mr. Pestler sends for him. He told me that Daffy's elixir was poison." "Very good. You think I'm a murderess, then," replied Mrs. Seedley. "This is the language you used to your mother. I have met with misfortunes. I have sunk low in life. I have kept my courage and now walk on foot. But I did not know I was a murderess before, and thank you for the news." "Mamma," said the poor girl, who was always ready for tears, "you shouldn't be hard upon me. I didn't mean, I did not wish to say you would do any wrong to this dear child, only—" And that's the end for me. So, well, I hope that the recording is good enough for you to understand my voice. I'm sorry, this is just a basic sound recording, and well, thank you for the chance, and if it's too bad, please let me know and I will do it again. Thank you.
The recording was absolutely fine, Hernan. Just a bit weird because I couldn't play it within Discord, but it's okay, I managed. So, the sound quality was perfect. So if you need to do it again, you don't need to do anything other than what you just did. Okay? So, a couple of words, well, one word and a phrase, just to show you I was listening. The first word, Kensington, with a S in the middle. It's a very famous part of London, Kensington. Okay? And then just this bit here, you went very good. Like you were saying something was very good, but that's not what she's saying. So it would be very good. You think I'm a murderess then, okay? So as in not very good. The opposite of very good. Annoyed very good, if you like. Okay, and part 5 is coming up with Paulette, who very kindly organised this for everybody. So big thank you to Paulette. Good job. And yeah, you should be proud of yourself. So let's go to Paulette's recording. Here it is. And start playing.
"Oh no, my love, only that I was a murderess, in which case I had better go to the Old Bailey. Though I didn't poison you when you were a child, but gave you the best of education, and the most expensive masters money could procure. Yes, I've nursed 5 children, and buried 3, and the one I loved the best of all, and tended through croup and teething and measles and whooping cough, and brought up with foreign masters, regardless of expense, and with accomplishments at Minerva House, which I never had when I was a girl, when I was too glad to honour my father and mother, that I might live long in the land, and to be useful, and not to mope all day in my room and act the fine lady. Says I'm a murderess. Ah, Mrs. Osborne, may you never nourish a viper in your bosom. That's my prayer." "Mamma, mamma!" cried the bewildered girl, and the child in her arms set up a frantic chorus of shouts. "A murderess, indeed! Go down on your knees and pray to God to cleanse your wicked, ungrateful heart, Amelia, and may He forgive you as I do. and Mrs. Sedley tossed out of the room, hissing out the word poison once more, and so ending her charitable benediction. Till the termination of the natural life, this breach between Mrs. Sedley and her daughter was never thoroughly mended. The quarrel gave the elder lady numberless advantages which she did not fail to turn to account with female ingenuity and perseverance. For instance, she scarcely spoke to Emilia for many weeks afterwards. She warned the domestics not to touch the child, as Mrs. Osborne might be offended. She asked her daughter to see and satisfy herself that there was no poison prepared in the little dairy messes that were concocted for Georgie. When neighbours asked after the boy's health, she referred them pointedly to Mrs. Osborne. She never ventured to ask whether the baby was well or not. She would not touch the child, although he was her grandson, and own precious darling, for she was not used to children, and might kill it. And whenever Mr. Pestler came upon his healing inquisition, she received the doctor with such a sarcastic and scornful demeanour as made the surgeon declare that not Lady Thistlewood herself, whom he had the honour of attending professionally, could give herself greater airs than old Mrs. Sedley, from whom he never took a fee. And very likely Emmy was jealous too, upon her own part, as what mother is not, of those who would manage her children for her, or become candidates for the first place in their affections. It is certain that when anybody nursed the child, she was uneasy, and that she would not no more allow Mrs. Clapp or the domestic to dress or tend him than she would have let them wash her husband's miniature, which hung over her little bed, the same little bed from which the poor girl had gone to his, and to which she retired now for many long, silent, tearful, but happy years. In this room was all Amelia's heart and treasure. Here it was that she tended her boy and watched him through the many ills of childhood, with the constant passion of love. The elder George returned in him somehow, only improved, and as if come back from heaven, in 100 little tones, looks, and movements, the child was so like his father that the widow's heart thrilled as she held him to it, and he would often ask the cause of her tears. It was because of his likeness to his father. She did not scruple to tell him. She talked constantly to him about his dead father, and spoke of her love for George to the innocent and wondering child, much more than she ever had done to George himself, or to any confidant of her youth. To her parents she never talked about this matter, shrinking from baring her heart to them. Little George, very likely, could understand no better than they, but into his ears she poured her sentimental secrets unreservedly, and into his only. Thank you.
Okay, very nicely read, Paulette. Well done. A few little corrections. Guess who forgot to unmute her microphone? Yeah, I'll try to cut this bit out. So, okay, so Paulette, your first word here, expense, just the stress, expense. You stress on the second syllable. Then prayer, not like prior. Prayer. Her, not the. I think that was just a misreading. Then ingenuity, to be ingenious, but ingenuity. Concocted, surgeon, candidates, not dates, candidates. Cause, cause and effect, not cause, core. This, not his, again I think you just misread it. And one smiley for years. Well done, and well done everybody. We are at chapter 38 in the book, page 273, 200 in the PDF, 267 in the book, and I think we're starting the very joy of this woman was a sort of grief. Okay, that's where we should be starting next session. So thank you for reading, and well done. You're all very brave. And I'll try and post this up forthwith. Okay, as I say, those of you who read, if you would like to, you can just practice the corrections or record them. Or record them and send them to me. Why have I started sneezing? Okay, so I hope that didn't deafen anybody. I'll see you next time. Bye.